Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 71 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your co-host, Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm here in person with Tim.
My God.
It's really weird to be able to like look across, not just at the Zoom.
Actually Isaiah, and it's actually Tim in the same room. I'm Timothy Peterson, and this is, I believe, only our second time we have ever recorded a podcast in the same room together. So this is remarkable. It's a treat for us. Very glad that we're able to do this. I want to just do a couple other things before we introduce our guests. I want to give a shout out to a couple listeners. Joshua Tippergan is someone who has been listening to our podcast. He claims he listens to it every time he's been commuting into a job in New Jersey. And it's quite a long drive. So he said he's basically an episode long.
So he's an expert, basically.
He's an expert. He said he's up to about episode 50 or so, but he's listened consecutively. Wow. Good for Joshua Tippergan. Thank you for telling us that. Thank you for telling us that we're actually providing you useful information, and we're glad that you're continuing to listen. Also, I said I would say hi to Jack Dorico, because I'm not sure we ever have said hi to Jack during the course of this amazing podcast. And he does a lot of amazing work for Trellis and for Digital Commerce Today, our event series. And watch for one coming up in September, an in-person event that we're going to be doing in Boston. It's going to be exciting. We hope everyone who's listening, praise the roof. We'll have a great time.
We expect our guests to be there.
All of our guests. We expect every guest to either sponsor or buy a ticket, and attend our event later this year. Just other than that, I want to give a quick pause here so we can insert our sponsor mentions.
Our first sponsor is Punch Out To Go. Punch Out To Go is a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. Punch Out To Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. With their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for Punch-Out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate business results. Balance is our other sponsor. Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com, book a session, and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance.
Thank you for that. I hope that was enough time for our editor to insert our sponsor mentions. Thank you so much to them. We really appreciate all that you do for us. It's great to be here, episode 71. And now I'm going to throw it back to Isaiah to introduce our guests and to run full steam ahead.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to introduce Tal Rotman from Namogoo. I think I'm saying that right. We were asking before how to pronounce it correctly. So yeah, you've got wealth of experience in digital and e-commerce, and obviously have a lot to say about what you guys are doing currently. But please give us some background for context so people kind of understand you and your background.
Yeah, 100%. So first of all, good job on the pronunciation of the name. It's a name that, when I joined, I was like, what's the deal here? And we actually put out a little YouTube clip of, all the different ways people have said it. We've heard it all. My personal favorite was Namogoo.
I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Tal Rotman. I've been with the company for 4.5 years. So, in the SaaS space, that's a lifetime, definitely. I'm one of the happy dinosaurs at the company.
I was just thinking how it's kind of sad that now, like 5 years, I was going to maybe even post on like LinkedIn or something, like 5 years is like working 30 years at like totally. What's it called, like whatever,
it's like dog years.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Totally. Yeah, so I've been with the company for quite a while. My career started actually in telecom. I like to say that I was a cable monkey at the beginning of my career, and I connected servers in all over the world.
Wow.
Got to deploy systems in Indonesia, and my boss must have liked me because he sent me to a project in the Maldives, and then I was based out of Israel, and then I got relocated to London, and with my future wife, and we were based there, and I really kind of traveled all around, and got really involved in the world of telecommunications, and kind of moved from there into a consulting role, and really that's where I started to really understand, what are companies looking for, right? What are the challenges that they're encountering, and how we can solve those with technology. And that was, I think, kind of the light bulb moment, moving on from being a cable monkey to actually understanding what the challenges and the problems are, and more than that, helping to expose what maybe they didn't even realize were problems. And that for me was, the moment where it got really exciting, right? Helping companies to understand, what are the things that they're struggling with, they don't even know that they're struggling with. Right. And for me, that's kind of,
we know a lot about that on this podcast in B2B.
Oh, yes. I would say it's a theme that we come back to again and again.
Yeah. Our solutions consultant, our kind of like head of solutions, she's always like, feel like what is always tough is that we like come in and people just want like a website or a new experience. It's like, what really ends up happening is we have to basically consult on like all their systems, all their processes. And it's like,
right.
We need to start pitching ourselves as like process optimization consultants, because that's really what ends up happening. We're not just like developers. It's so much more.
You're not just doing a widget, there's a bigger picture. Absolutely. And that, for me, that's what gets my juices flowing. I love, that's what's really super interesting for me, to understand what companies are trying to do, and then try to fit and say, hey, these are the kind of challenges that you may not be aware of. That's for me really, really fun, and that's what I want to keep doing for the rest of my career.
So tell us about Namogoo. Sorry, Namogoo. Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us about that, how you ended up there, and
sure.
What do you guys do? Because I think 100%. You guys have some massive customers, but I kind of feel like you're probably not like, you're not like a brand name. The average person definitely, I don't think, knows who you guys are.
Right. So I joined the company, like I said, nearly 5 years ago. As always, friend of a friend. I got to know our CEO Hemi, and there was just a great chemistry, really exciting and interesting technology. And I said, let's do this. This is great. People don't know about this, and they need to know about this.
Yeah.
And so, we've been in the space. Actually, the company was founded 8 years ago. And it's a pretty interesting origin story, actually. So the company, but I'll kind of go into a little bit about what the company does. The vision of the company actually is to really focus on different factors in the conversion or the customer experience that people aren't really familiar with or aware of, and how they're impacting that journey, right? So 8 years ago, the first factor, or the first thing that we really focused on when it came to the digital journey, was this phenomena, what we coined hijacking, customer journey hijacking. And there's academic research about it. It's not something that we invented, but we were the ones that said, hey, this is a actual problem that e-commerce companies don't know about, and it's actually affecting the customer journey. And this was really the first in what we call today our customer digital journey continuity platform. We're really focused on making sure that the journey kind of completes as designed, right? The origin story, and this is kind of where, Hemi had that, that light bulb moment, is he was in the midst of an exit from his previous company, and he was approached by one of these companies that are doing the hijacking, these bad actors. And he said, hey, I'm just imagining, the trench coat and the glasses with the mustache, right? And, just to say, hey, sell us your visitors, right? Sell us access to your visitors, and we'll monetize them, right? And he, first of all, that's just dumb, right? He's in the middle of an exit. Why is he ever going to do that, right? But this was the light bulb moment. He said, okay, what is this? And I'm not gonna join the forces of evil, but I'll join the forces of good and see what I can do. Let me try to prevent this. What's the value in preventing it, right? And that's kind of where we came from, right? This particular interruption to the customer journey, this customer journey hijacking, is where we said, okay, there's.
Can you give an example specifically of what it would look like, or is like a
100%.
pop-up, or like what is it?
Yeah. 100%. So I like to describe it as in an analogy first. So imagine you're going to, let's say, the Nike store, and you're going to buy some running shoes, and somebody walks up to you and says, hey, do you have the same running shoes? I've got the same running shoes for 50% off on the other side of the mall. And you go, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. And you leave, right? So that phenomena is actually happening online. So imagine you're, just as an example, you're on Nike or one of our customers, Carhartt, right? And you're actually gonna, you're looking, you're going down the funnel, and all of a sudden you see a competitor's ads, right? You're on Nike, you see Adidas, right? I like to, it's that Coke Pepsi thing, right? You see a competitive product ad, but it looks really native. These hijackers are pretty advanced. This is not mom and pop companies, right? They're actually pretty advanced. So it looks very native. It looks like you kind of expect an ad to. People click it, they leave, and now they're no longer going down the conversion funnel. And what we do is we use ML to identify all these different types of hijackers, and they're constantly morphing and mutating, and we find them and we block them before they become impactful to the journey, right? And that's very significant.
So let me ask for just a little bit of clarification there.
Yeah.
Do you define a hijacker exclusively as competitors, or is it like, how are you defining that?
That's a great question. So, we often explain this phenomena in a competitive, right? And because that's really makes sense to people, right? Like I say, the Coke Pepsi thing, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really not always competitive. When people are looking, seeing these ads, the hijackers are very clever. They're not only looking at the products that you're looking at the moment, they could be looking at your cookies, your history. Maybe you're buying, gifts for your kids for their birthday, and all of a sudden you see ads for toys, right? Whatever it is that's going to resonate with the visitor at that moment, that's the ad that they're going to pull from affiliate or from different types of ad networks, pull them in, display them, and then people will, get distracted.
And they're just aggregating all this data from publicly available sources, or they're hacking in to get this data, or how
they're looking at that visitor at that time. It's quite personalized, actually, right? They're looking at what the visitor's interested in. But by the way, sometimes it's not as clever as that. It could also just be junky stuff, right? Spin the wheel to win. It could be salacious. It could be gambling, right? Sometimes it's not as clever. The net is that people see that kind of stuff and they're thinking, what's going on? Why is Carhartt showing me this stuff? They're associating it with the brand. And then people say, oh, I'm out of here, right? And they jump out. The net is that people leave the site, right? Whether it's because it was junky or salacious, or whether
I feel like a lot of this happens on mobile for whatever reason, we
do actually release an annual report that kind of shows the split. We show splits on different types of devices, on geographies, right? I've gotten, feedback from folks that, people who are often skeptical about it, right? They'll say, yeah, I'm sure it's happening, but it's only happening to people who are not technology savvy. Or the flip side, they'll say, oh, they're very technology savvy. It's only happening on mobile, or it's not happening in Texas. It's not happening in Canada, right? It's happening everywhere, right? We typically see it something like 15 to 25% of sessions.
Wow.
That varies. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it varies. There's seasonality. But yeah, we typically see between 15 to 25%.
And where do you see like the value here? I mean, I'm assuming, small, little Shopify sites probably not ready to invest in this because it's, they're just trying to like make their first sale or whatever,
There's a maturity model thing for sure.
What level of maturity do you guys see where, I mean, it sounds like with that level, it's probably going down and down, right? I mean, if you're talking about potentially 25%, I mean, if you're doing a few $1 million, that could be significant, right?
It could be impactful. And really, what we typically, and, historically, we've kind of brought this value to larger enterprises, right? And, however you want to count that, but, the larger enterprises are the ones that are really going to see, it move the needle. Really?
Yeah, like 1% for them could be millions of dollars, right? So
you got it. You got it.
So go ahead.
No, but I was going to say that, typically we're kind of in that space. But what's exciting is, that was 8 years ago. We've progressed since then, right? And we actually do have additional capabilities that are super relevant for across the board, right? Although we're serving, Marks and Spencers and Advanced Auto Parts, we have a customers that are really across the board with some of our additional solutions. But yeah, I'll answer your question, Tim.
Oh, no, it's a quick one. It's just kind of related, a little off to the side of some of the things you were talking about here. What about the end consumer? So what about their perception of the brand before and after, you do your magic? Like, do they say, wow, everything is better, or do they miss getting some of these ads and the opportunities to get other things? What's the perception?
I'll give you the flip side of, two different answers to that question, and two sides of the same coin. So on the one side, the reason why you guys, may not have heard Namogoo and why people are skeptical about hijacking is that people don't complain about it, right? People don't really perceive it, or they're just so used to it. They don't really complain about it too much. We don't see tickets being open to our customers saying, hey, what happened to my hijacking, right? Or before we'd get deployed, hey, I'm being hijacked. That doesn't happen really. We don't see that. Typically happen. Occasionally we've got that, hey, I'm seeing these ads on your website, right? But that doesn't really typically happen. So we don't actually see a perception issue or a customer service, impact for one way or the other. But what we do see is an increase in conversion. We do see, right, less people, right, less people leaving the shop, more people going down and converting, right, inevitably. So that's actually, that's our claim to fame, right? We can see conversion, we can prove it. We do that with an A/B test.
What are typical, I'm sure you guys have some average numbers or something.
Oh yeah. We see at the very least about 1.5% conversion rate uplift.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, we've got customers that are doing 3, 4, 5. It's, it really, and as you said, with the larger enterprises, we're talking a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, that could be essentially 5% more in sales, right? Or whatever, if it's the higher number, so yeah, which is obviously significant.
Very significant. Yeah.
And how hard is this to implement? Sounds hard, easy,
Every vendor is going to say their implementation's easy. Ours is with the hijacking prevention is a single line of code, JavaScript tag deployed, and that's that.
You guys have like an app for, Magento extension, Shopify app, anything like that, or?
So with our additional solutions, we actually do have plugins for the major platforms. This solution, it's just not necessary, right?
So small, it's almost like a Google Tag Manager kind of thing.
That's exactly what it is.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Which no, that's good to know, because if we have customers that need that, just say, hey, we get some work, we get some extra Google Tag Manager work for us.
So how do you price this for clients? Is it based on like their revenue?
I'm gonna guess sessions. It's got to be sessions, right?
Sessions.
The way that we do it, actually, there is a sizing, right? It is based on amount of traffic, and we're always going to prove that ROI. That's the strategy, right? That 1.5% conversion rate uplift, we're going to commit to that. Right, we're going to make sure that we deliver it. We're going to prove it, and if we don't hit that, shake hands, park friends.
Okay. Well, it sounds like almost a no-brainer, but I don't want to turn this too much into a sales pitch just for
no,
your guys' product.
Yeah.
But I am very interested, and it's good to spread the word, because I bet you a lot of people could benefit from this. But it sounds like you guys have a ton of insight into conversions.
Right.
So can we talk about that? Because I'm a big believer, and just for context, like Trellis, my main company, obviously, which has helped us start this podcast in terms of resources and time, but we're doing a lot of development, right? A lot of website work, and sometimes it feels like the conversion rate is like a little bit out of our control. Like, we can make a nice website, but a nice website isn't like, I think people don't realize it's like, just because you make a nice website doesn't mean you're going to have amazing conversions. There's just so many things that go into it.
Factors.
What are you guys seeing? I know depends on the industry, depends on the client. Like, it's so
question.
Are there any things that you're seeing in the industry, in the recent, last few years that you're like, hey, like, people are really missing out on this, that it's just a no-brainer, like your product, but
Yeah.
other things.
No. That's it's actually it's a good segue because when I'm out there kind of evangelizing, hijacking for us is that's how we build the company. It's a very important product. But actually, what's exciting today is really kind of where we've gone with it, right? The underlying data that feeds some of our products actually is super interesting, to your point, right? So the flip side, for example, of hijacking, which is illegitimate, right, is the world of promotions, right? Like if you intentionally are bringing in traffic and then trying to get them to convert using a promotion, more often than not, it's a very very simple approach, right? It's come in,
coupon code,
page,
yeah,
20% off summer sale, done, right?
Yeah.
And so the first question that is to be asked is, why 20%? Right? Like why are you giving out, why is it 20%? Why not 30? Why not 10? Right? And often very few people have a good answer for that, right? Because that's what everybody else is doing. And so what we did was we actually built based on that data and seeing a lot of today we analyze more than 1 billion sessions. By the way, no PII data, but we analyze more than 1 billion sessions in our data lake. Wow. And that's a lot of data to train ML on. And so we actually use all these different data points that we've collected over time, and I can talk a little bit about that later, to actually feed an ML engine that can identify the intent of the visitor and then give them the right promotion at the right time in the journey. Wow. Instead of giving them 20% off, bang, right on the landing page. Wait a beat. What's this visitor interested in? What are they doing? What kind of different factors can we identify to say what's the intent of the visitor? If they have high propensity to abandon, definitely hit them up and give them a high discount to try to convince them to go down the funnel, or maybe free shipping when they're a little bit later in the journey. But if they have a high propensity to purchase, maybe you don't need to give them straight off the bat. Maybe you wait a beat and then you give them 10%. Yeah. 20, so
in some cases, you're kind of over promoting and hurting your sales, right? You're discounting when you don't need to. And then in some cases, 20% is not enough. You're going to lose those people, but maybe 30% or whatever it would be the right. tipping point.
And you're eating into your margins, right? That's the big problem,
so
right?
What's interesting in a way then is, people have done this sort of testing for years, but not with the quality data that you have available behind it. So that's kind of the interesting part of it.
And I don't think it's very personalized, right? They're just kind of like, well, let's test out this and let's test that. And it's usually for like the entire website, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the entire, you're exactly right. It's the entire website and it's a particular period of time, but is it, and then it's hard to isolate, right? The impact, was it because of the period of time, or was the product?
So, the economy for that week was good, or the month,
exactly.
Especially nowadays, I feel like every month it's like, are we in a recession? Is it inflation? It's like,
right. Exactly.
It's so volatile that I still sometimes have a hard time wondering, like, is it economy? Is it the season? There's just so many variables, right?
Right. And so it really is more of a kind of a personalized approach to promotions, right? Identifying kind of what the visitors kind of, what are the factors that identify whether they're intent to purchase, et cetera, right? That's kind of where we're going with it. The underlying data points are far more interesting, actually. And we've got a lot of different data. Again, I'm gonna double click on the fact it's not PII data. It's not, it's GDPR safe, it's CCPA safe, right? We're not looking at who the person is. We're looking at information about the session, and then we're actually building affinities to within our network, right? Whether it's subvertical, right? If it's footwear, or if it's geography, or various affinities, these are all being fed into the ML engine, right? Mm-hmm. But the data points themselves are super, super interesting. So one of the things that we're looking at, for example, is shopping extensions, right? This is a big deal, right? Like it's become much more of an issue, right? A lot of companies are very, very aware of shopping extensions like Honey and Rakuten Ebates, and which are 100% legitimate, right? These are not hijackers, right? They're totally legitimate, but they're a little bit of a gray area, right? For some retailers, they love them. Some retailers, they don't love them, right? And they don't, but it's very emotive, right? There isn't a lot of data that supports, that. And so that's what we're starting to realize, like that data can be incredibly valuable to decision making. And so we can expose some of that data. We can actually build segments out of that data, build audiences out of those different data points. We have data around device, really interesting stuff like CPU availability. And I'm not talking like, what CPU my iPhone has. Like I'm talking about, I'm thinking about like the typical browser example, right? I've got 1,000 browser tabs open, so it's not run so fast. Yep. We can identify those things, and those are part of the data points that we're feeding, and those are super interesting. You can actually do different things with that, and it's pretty exciting. Like, for example, CPU availability is the classic one is, right, don't show a video if the CPU is not available. If you got a low CPU availability, show a picture, right? Show an image, something static.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, and that's where some of our customers have really kind of gone deep on it. They've actually said, yes, we're going to do that. But what we found is, high CPU availability visitors convert. That's just like the data shows that. So
they have money, they have good internet, they probably have
whatever the logic is.
Pro. It's probably, it's like a weird coincidence, probably,
Yeah,
exactly. It's like iPhone users have more money, right? iPhone users, I think, spend more than Android users. I think that's just
that's known. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
A known thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So okay, let's take that as an audience and let's do something special with them, whether it's, filtering that for remarketing purposes or whatever the case might be. Right.
It sounds like this could be incredible for B2B, because I think what's interesting about B2B and why we started this podcast is the reason it's called the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce is I've been doing B2B e-commerce essentially for 10 years, and it's tough, right? It's like, and a lot of these are small businesses, medium-sized businesses, sometimes large, but like they historically are, email, phone, it's mostly offline. It's starting to get more online, and even if it's online, it could be like EDI and these very like non-personalized experience in a sense, or very just like automated.
Right.
But the ironic thing about that is B2B is hyper personalized, in that one of the reasons I think most companies have never figured out e-commerce is because they have different pricing for every customer and, different blah, 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 whatever, shipping and logistics and all these things that are super complicated to just like throw up on a web. Like you can't just like throw up a little Shopify site and have personalized pricing per customer. Like we're talking sometimes large catalogs where each product has a different price per company account, and it can just get super complicated when you're talking about like these
rebates. Make things very complicated too. Sure.
Yeah, or they another one that's been coming up more and more is tax exempt, but not everyone's tax exempt, and you need to automate that. So you need to know like if they're tax exempt or they're not tax exempt.
Certain SKUs are also tax exempt versus
exactly.
other.
Also payment,
payment. Our sponsor balance.
Our sponsor balance
our sponsor balance is helping solve that by, you have all these different moving pieces, right? Like, and you need, in theory, I think vendors are solving that balance, but potentially you guys could be that personalization pricing engine. And I truly believe that these B2B companies need to completely rethink their price. I think they should automate it.
Yep.
I think that right now, if you ask most B2B companies, and I've talked to multi Fortune 500, in some cases in the Fortune 500, it's up to the salesperson, which is, if you think about how insane that is, how much margin they're losing because a salesperson just decides to discount it to get the sale.
Right.
When in today's world, we have all this data, you guys could be doing the pricing and promotions for these B2B customers.
Yep.
In a smart programmatic way based on intent and whatever longevity.
And by the way, we really focus on the ML aspect, right? Because that's what's exciting. That's the newness of the technology, the innovation, but we can put guardrails around it as well, right? We can build rules around and say to the ML, okay, here's your range, you
can't discount like 80, especially in B2B, like,
exactly.
The margins are usually a little bit thinner. You could probably, let's say we can't go below X, whatever.
Right.
They're usually already discounting in the sense that they already are selling in B2B.
Or you may want to like do it in parallel. Like we've got customers who are who are putting in site-wide rules, that we can implement that too. That's a piece of cake, right? But we can do that in parallel. Some segment, do ML based, and another part do rule based, right? So maybe you want to do clearance, or maybe if you've got a B2B part of the site, you want to apply a certain set of rules to it versus your D2C site, right?
I mean, to me, it just seems like we're at a point now where, like, if you're not automating pricing, I feel like you're fighting a losing battle. Like, it's almost like you're just so far behind what's possible, right?
Well, yeah, and I think real connected to that too is that it's the whole tradition of B2B having tiers, right? Which is a different thing than just
they usually have volume tiers.
Yeah,
but then sometimes they do these, like, personalized sales rep quote discounts based on whatever.
Yeah, but what happens is essentially you have a tier, but then the tier is broken by the sales rep having the ability to change what's happening within the tier. And then, therefore you're having hundreds, if not thousands of permutations, and it just doesn't make any sense. And then
the client doesn't even know what tier they're in.
The client doesn't even
call up and figure it out.
And the client doesn't often care. I mean, which is weird. It's weird to say that, but I was head of e-commerce for a B2B company, and they just wanted the sale, right? So we were talking about these particular components that were going to be part of a car and all this kind of thing. And they're sold in the tens of thousands of units, right? They're like,
because they're making potentially millions of cars, right?
Well, exactly. And so we're like, all right, we're signing the deal for BMW for the next season. They'll need 200,000 of these or whatever. And it's just like, they didn't care if it was like 3 cents up or 3 cents down or $1 up or $1. They're like, we just need the 300,000 units sold, right? So it really needs to be personalized in the way that you're talking about it, not like the tier and then the salesperson and then whatever. And then, yes, I could see you having a piece of that, given the machine learning capabilities you have.
In that tier where you've got, a B2B offering that is a wider, that can cover a wider spectrum of prospective customers, right? You may be selling, something that could be D2C, but you're also selling it to small businesses, of which there are hundreds of thousands, right?
Exactly. And they act more and more like consumers. I mean, I think we had Staples, who's a customer of ours, and they were, they've been B2B forever, right? What a lot of people don't realize, they've also been online forever. They're kind of like, I feel like the neglected compared to Amazon, just because everyone thinks of Amazon, but like they said that the buyer, they're small business buyers, they described it as companies with employees up to, let's say, 10 or 20, essentially behave as consumers when they're buying B2B. So you're talking about 99% of businesses are, I think, less than 20 employees. I mean, almost all businesses are like, sole proprietors or just really small companies, right? There's not that many. When you start to get into the higher tiers, it's a really small percentage of companies. And so, to your point, it's like you should be basically giving them a D2C experience, right?
Yeah. And there are lots of companies like that sell to that sector, right? I mean, Staples is great, and Boston Bread, obviously.
But fun, by the way, I don't know if you watched the game last night, but I just gotta throw that in there because
but like, WB Mason, right, is just another one of those sense. And there's lots of companies that are selling to those, those SMB, we don't call them mom and pop shops anymore, but like that's what we're talking about, right? There's a lot of companies out there, and they're probably happy to go online and get a personalized experience, just like they would if they
want to save time, right? I mean, my wife, she runs a small Airbnb that's like kind of her side business, and it's like she buys everything basically online. It's like,
sure,
she doesn't have time. You don't want to call people to get a little bit of supplies or whatever, parts and stuff like that,
By the way, I should interrupt for 1 second. Isaiah got married since our last podcast, so I want to make sure everyone knows that.
You said wife there. Is that the first wife on the podcast?
Yeah, you got to get used to that. It's been. I do apologize. We lost a few weeks. I wasn't able to record, but there was a reason for that. So we're back to normal your normal scheduling.
Congratulations.
Hello, wife. Congratulations.
But like, it's funny just because I see her ordering like, and she's a late, you know, that's the thing. When you're a small business, you might be ordering at 11 p.m.
Mhm.
You can't call a salesperson at 11. I mean, you could, but it's probably not going to answer, right? Or you don't want to email, you know.
I know that I'm the interviewee here, but can I ask you a question? Like, and Tim, you know, from your previous experience and, you know, and Isaiah and all the interactions that you have, you know, what percentage of, you know, of companies are actually approaching it in a D2C way, right? Like what's
Not enough.
willingness, right?
Not
enough.
Not
That's
enough.
a great answer. It is not enough. There are more that should be doing that and more that are doing it, I would say, on a regular basis, but not enough.
I mean, I still, you know, we have a customer that left us because they just refuse to do e-commerce, and they're still doing request to quote and mostly on the phone and just they just don't believe in it yet. They know that they need to do it, or they're considering doing it, but it's such a low priority for them that they're just not even.
Is it inertia? Is it something? Is it around inertia?
Well, I think that there are still, you know, my friend is a good example. He's selling his business, corrugated boxes, to a larger conglomerate in the space. And, you know, these people can make good livings with email, phone.
Yeah.
There's still enough business to be had that way. That they just haven't had to change. They haven't had to, you know, to adapt to e-commerce yet. So.
Well, I mean, there's, and I really want to be careful because I don't want to give away the name of this business because it'll make them sound bad. So I just want to really clear this. But there's a facilities management supplier, like that's literally like the focus, facilities management, and they work with like housing associations and all this kind of stuff too, schools, governmental buildings, and they're supplying cleaning supplies and all this kind of stuff. They are so resistant to doing things e-commerce because they have thousands and thousands of people in these sales positions and all of these relationships and everything. They're worried about the ecosystem,
right? Yeah, it's
the ecosystem.
You're disrupting your own company, right?
Cannibalization.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of factors. It's a combination of, well, one, it's not an immediate ROI, right? Because the cost to build the site is usually fairly high because it's not usually as simple as just turn on a little basic site. There's usually some decent complexity, the ERP integration. You're usually talking at least a 6-figure investment, right? So there's the money piece, and then there's the people piece, and just all these factors combined. And then a lot of it, I think, is culture too, right? A lot of these companies are legacy. What I find very interesting is that a lot of the family run companies, once it's passed down, like when you're talking like Gen X below, they're pretty eager. They're like, they're investing in e-commerce. I'm talking to wine and food and beverage company, and I think, you know, he's definitely a Gen X kind of guy, and you can tell, like, I'm pretty sure he's taken over the company from his family. I think they're about 100 years old. So, and he's got the last name. So it's like, and he's like all about it. He seems
he's
pretty
evolving it because
he's maybe a little bit older than me, but a lot of these companies are still run by, you know, people that are kind of at the tail end of their career, and they did not grow up in digital. And it's like, are they really going to invest 300 grand into a B2B commerce site and the marketing and then the culture? It's like half of them probably are on their way out, you know? It's like,
I think you really hit a point as well with regards to like the sales org, right? And that there's a lot of resistance, and, you know, it's like a typical thing of automation and the resistance to automation, right? You know, and again, to like you did, Tim, I'll say, you know, this is a company that is, you know, a customer, but I won't call them out. They're not in the US, but they really they have a very big sales staff, and it's kind of an Avon kind of approach to how they sell, right? So there's a lot of folks out there, consultants, right, out there, and so our technology is, you know, quite cutting edge and providing promotions based on the experience in a very near real time, right? in the journey, and we're giving promotions, and those consultants, are going to feel, hey, wait a second, I can't give that promotion, or like I'm competing now with, a robot, basically, right? And so that's probably where a lot of the resistance lies. And I think that companies really have to find the equilibrium, right? To say, look, this is what we've got. This is the online journey, and this is where it's going, right? If we don't compete, there are bigger fish that are going to.
Well, that's what I think. I think that we've been talking about this for like 20 episodes.
Yes,
now.
we have.
Where is the tipping point where it's like, advanced auto parts, like they have the money. Eventually they're going to automate more and more, and they're going to build all these infrastructure. It's like, you're the mom and pop auto reseller. It's like, how are you, at some point you got to catch up a little bit here, right? Like, I feel like you can't just,
I think where I'm tending for and we can of course go in a different direction with this, but kind of where my mind is going in this now is that the tipping point is really consumer driven. Who is the end consumer? What are they really asking for? How do they really want the experience? And a lot of things are changing in the economy right now, but just the idea that so many people adopted Instacart, or that did things like Carvana or whatever that they didn't do before.
my dad got Turo.
Yeah.
Like, and I know like people my age that don't even know what Turo is.
Yep.
And he's 75. So like,
That's
he's
great.
ordering Turo, and it's like,
Yeah.
I think people don't realize like how digitally savvy people are getting, and they also don't realize it's like millennials, they're like millennials. A lot of millennials are like 37, 38.
Yeah.
They're not like 20 years old anymore.
No, you're
Like,
right.
and also I find the Gen X people are pretty technically savvy. I mean, they're not like,
Yeah.
they grew up with computers at some point in their life, right? Maybe not when they were like 5 years old, but it's like Gen X isn't like this, like, and now those are probably more and more the decision makers, right? I mean, those are people in their 40s and 50s.
Like,
Like,
there was a really, and again, you might even have clients in the space. Do you have any clients in the insurance space? Any type of insurance? Yeah. So I happen to have a client in that space, and I'm having fascinating conversations about this because their customers, both business to business and business to consumer, are demanding to get not just like, click here to have me call you for a quote, but really getting far more information.
Absolutely.
But they have to change legislation because a lot of states actually don't even allow that. Right?
Really?
Yeah. Which is fascinating.
you mean they need a person to give a quote?
You need a person to give a quote. It's required by law in a lot of states. So you have to go around these things.
I think that law is going to get changed.
It's gonna change, but it's really being driven by the consumer.
It for sure. But on the flip side, right? Like, just getting to that, get a quote. I mean, that's a journey in itself, right? And that's where we kind of help, right? To your point, like, we can actually use those different technologies to help them, smooth out that funnel just to get a quote. Get a quote is the conversion event, right? Yep. And then whether it's in person or whether it's offline or whatever, that can happen as well. But I mean, so you're right. Like, they've adapted technology to the point that they can, right? From a regulatory perspective. I wanted to touch back on what you were saying earlier, though, on the smaller shops, right? You're saying that they're going to struggle. I'm not going to say that Namogoo is, doing this from a completely altruistic perspective, but we do see that a lot of what we're doing is democratizing capabilities that the larger companies have, right? Think Amazon, right? We're definitely not going to sell our intent-based promotions capabilities to Amazon, right? They'll
build it themselves. We all know.
They
right?
have an army of developers. They could probably just have people do it manually. They've got
they would never. I mean, they just once a lot of these companies, they get so big, they don't want to buy because they want to do it.
100%. Although we do have very big customers, and some of our capabilities, definitely, like, things like that. Those are technologies that they're going to develop. And so we really believe that a lot of these capabilities are really helping that SMB world, right? We're taking those technologies that those really big fish can do themselves, right? And build in-house, and, bringing that capability and delivering it at a price point that makes sense for them, where, it's actually going to deliver ROI.
Well, that's why we started this podcast. It's like, don't be the B2B of Toys R Us, right? Like, you heard about the retail apocalypse, right? We all kind of like remember that, that kind of saying and that thing. And I feel like it's going to start happening in B2B. And I think it already is a little bit. I do think that there's consolidation. I think some people see the writing on the wall. they're selling to PE firms, they're selling to the bigger firms because they probably realize, how am I going to, double the business? And they don't really have a path to do that. But I think the path to do that is to build that D2C like experience, right? It's like building, your own, owned marketing channel, right? SEO, PPC, building all that digital infrastructure.
And there's, when you're online, like the potential is endless, right? So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, even something, it sounds so small, but it's such a huge innovation. It's a lot of companies now for logistics, like where is my container? Where's my container traveling around the world? Until the pandemic, a lot of people weren't able to track it. Like they really didn't know exactly where it was at any given time. During the pandemic, they started putting GPS trackers in, every container.
Oh,
around
really?
the world. Yeah. So
what
really,
was that? Isn't there a really successful company, like some freight, what's it called? Some Silicon Valley freight company.
I won't remember it now, but yeah.
Yeah, I know there's some company that is in Silicon Valley that's like.
But it really is it's simple.
Doing
the tech has been there forever. You connect it and you can see it on an app now, right? But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you really couldn't. What didn't exist at all, but it makes so much sense and it's easy, right? I mean, that's the thing too. It is easy. It's not like we need to invent something.
So I think the simplified answer is there's a lot of opportunity to automate and optimize promotions and pricing and the experience and get rid of these hijackers with your guys' tool. But what else are you seeing in both B2B and B2C, or maybe your hybrid customers like in advanced auto parts, where it's probably like a blurred line? Like, is it a car shop buying? Is it my friend owns a little car shop. Like, is it him buying? Is it me buying? Like, it's probably hard to tell, right? Like, maybe you guys can start to identify whether it's like, the little, right, who that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of technology going into that today, right? And identifying, okay, I've got this massive basket. Hold on, where am I shipping to? Oh, I'm shipping this to a product that's like 100 of these units to a country that that we don't sell in, right? So that I mean, that in and of itself is a factor, right? And so you're losing control. I mean, that whole topic of like it cross border. Where you don't have a presence, and then companies are, they're small little companies that are doing great business, buying off of the website, getting them delivered to one location, they get turned around and sent to another geography, and then they're being, sold at a margin. That's it. You lose control, right? So I mean, that's one of the things that we're hearing a lot from our customers today. We're not able to, we can't tell them, we don't have a GPS on the products. And so we don't know that it's being.
So there's like international arbitrage going on right now, or a random country,
We're hearing it a lot. A lot of our customers are asking, hey, do you know anybody that can help us with that? Right. Because they're really truly.
Are they reselling it on Amazon, or what's the problem? I guess
they're reselling it locally on their own website. Right. So like we've heard customers who have some pretty high-end products, or they're pretty, they're quite hot and trending, and then they get their products purchased, shipped to another geography where they're not present, and then it's a website that's kind of I don't want to say a ripoff, but like says that we sell these products, they sell them, right? And
I'll tell you the solution. It sounds like another plug for one of our partners. There's a partner we have called Zonos that can help you with some of the cross-border fulfillment. My advice would be just, if there's demand, figure it out, go get in there and start doing it direct, and so that they can buy from you and not from these third parties. So there's apps.
There's a lot of solutions for cross-border. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's some of these kind of much easier technologies to get into cross-border more fast.
Well, I've been invited to the cross-border e-commerce conference in Shanghai, so maybe I'll find out more.
Are you sure you're gonna be able to get there? China's pretty.
No,
China's pretty locked down right now.
I was invited before COVID, and then they re-invited me to speak actually. So I got to figure this out.
Yeah, all I know is that I have a friend, his family in China. They couldn't get out because it's so locked down.
We'll see. We'll see.
So
I want to ask you another question, just for circle it around a little bit. So we talked about the hijacking and we talked about the promotions, but you said that there were other things that you were also working on in the company, and other things I want to give you a chance to put that out there before we get too close to the end.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, look, it's really the exciting thing is around the data points. That's what we're really kind of focusing on. The ability to identify all those different things, like what's the intent to purchase, or finding those hijackers, or identifying shopping extensions and their impact to the journey, their interactivity with the journey. Those different things are really being fed by our ability to recognize those, right? So I talked about the CPU example, right? We're able to identify different types of things that are super interesting. Like, for example, if you know that a visitor is privacy sensitive, maybe they've got some ad blockers, or they're using incognito, and they're using they're using different types of technologies like that, then you don't send them an email. Don't put them into an email marketing campaign. They will not like that, right? But you can personalize. You can still give them a personalized experience, but they don't want you to know who they are, so don't, right? And so there's different types
of. So it's almost like learning when not to market. It's like, that's really interesting.
Or market in a different way, right? Like maybe you want to personalize the site, right? That's fine, right? That's low touch. You don't want to be. I'm not going to use the word creepy, but like, you don't want to actually, get in their face with your marketing. So that's another example. And so there's these different segments that we've realized it's pretty new. It's exciting because we're talking to our customers and saying, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. And then we work together with them to build this segment that we can use to, like I said, personalize the experience from a performance perspective, from the creating these highly performant segments for remarketing, or for retargeting, or for acquisition. That for me is.
So you guys are finding all these different, like, interesting segments of types of buyers that you could split. Yeah. It could be all sorts of age. It could be almost anything, but it's like, and you privacy. Yeah, it's something probably I wouldn't think of as like our privacy, our customers that care a lot about privacy, right? Like they want a different way.
I'll give you one that blew my mind. Ad blockers, right? We can identify, and again, we're not doing this on a single session basis. We're doing this on aggregate, right? We're saying, right, this is this on aggregate, we're seeing that people who have ad blockers, surprising to me at least, convert like crazy, right? And I thought, okay, like these are people who don't want to be advertised to. But yesterday, actually, somebody said to me, maybe they know they have a problem, and that's why they've got the ad block, right? They're people who like to shop, and so, right, this is just a segment, right? This is people who have ad blockers, and we're not gonna advertise to them, because they told us don't advertise to me, right? That's fine. But you can still say, okay, these are highly valuable visitors, and so I'm going to spend my time in different ways to try to get them to engage and create brand affinity and all that kind of stuff, but in unique and different ways.
I'll give you one bit of data that I've had on ad blockers. So people who use ad blockers spend less time online and spend more money. Right, that I know for a fact from another study that I have the data from. So
they probably just want to be really efficient, right?
Yeah.
Don't want to waste time with ads.
Yeah.
We know what they want. They're high intent because they're like, if I'm going to this site, I'm seriously considering buying. And they value their leisure time. They value their leisure time. Right?
Sounds pretty good to me.
And it's like, all right, well, now we need to market outdoor products to them because they have all this leisure time or whatever,
I like that. That's good.
Oh, it sounds like you guys are just going to keep evolving and building this knowledge base to help your customers more and more. Which is
this, by the way, I should plug the name of the product. It's called Customer Journey OS. And so the premise is, right, we're providing this all these data points in a format that is actually highly syntactical, standardized, and we're actually allowing all of these different vendors that we're partnering with to actually deploy their data points into that structure as well. So if you want to put your data points, or if you're running an A/B test and you want to, you can't use cookies anymore, so you can throw them into there, right? And again, it's all highly syntactical. So when we partner with one technology company, then you can actually, you as an agency, for example, could use it again, the same code and the same methodology with all of the different places that you're deploying it. And that's kind of the idea, right? To create this one single source of truth in journey. We're not talking about a CDP. We're not planning on competing with any CDPs. It's really an in journey place where you're creating some very unique data points that can be leveraged in journey.
So I've, I know we're kind of coming towards the end here, but I'm curious, is there anyone that you guys are seeing in your network of customers? And I know, like, if you can't say too much or you can't say their name, but if you can, that would be ideal. Like, is there anyone that you think is just doing an amazing job in e-commerce, especially that has maybe a B2B component to their business that is like just a good like learning experience for people to kind of, because I think everyone sees Amazon, right? But they don't realize, like, okay, Amazon is Amazon. You're not going to be Amazon. Like, you got to kind of come up with your own little, like, more specific niche of business, right? Is there anyone in your guys' customer base, maybe even on the mid to smaller size, that you're just like, wow, these guys are really like, they're kind of blowing your minds in how well they're doing with e-commerce and the way they think about it?
Yeah, I'll give you two. Okay, so
Sure.
Advanced Auto Parts, you mentioned them, like they're great customer, and they are always innovating, and we love the approach. They're very, very open to discussing with us, how we can leverage, how they can leverage, our platform to do other things, right? We help them originally with the hijacking prevention, but actually they have such a rich offering, such a wide offering of SKUs, right? And they're always looking at ways to innovate. And for a company that in that space, which is quite traditional, it's very impressive, actually. And it's really,
I feel like they've developed a pretty strong digital culture.
Absolutely, a very strong digital culture, and also a very strong innovation culture, which are two different things. And if you don't do the latter, then the former doesn't work.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
So and we've seen a lot of companies that are very resistant to innovation, and invest a lot, big digital companies, but they're very resistant to innovation. And then I'll definitely call out Marks and Spencer's, who obviously a name that a lot of folks have heard of, but in terms of in the global ecosystem, a very, very big player, quite a traditional company, right? They've been around for a long time, an institution in the UK, right? But they are highly innovative, right? They really focus. They've got a team that looks at like 500 different technologies, and vets 500 different technologies every year, and that number just keeps going up every year.
Wow.
And I can attest to that. I've worked with Marks and Spencer in a startup that I founded 11 years ago. 10. I mean, it's really a long time. They were one of the first companies, their innovation team was interested in testing out, what we're up to. And it was a retail tool, right? So it was fascinating. They were just like on it, and so many other players that I thought were advanced were not interested. Marks and Spencer said, "We'll try it."
And again, like I lived in, as I think I mentioned, I lived in the UK for some time, and again, for me, I see this brand as a very traditional brand, right? And the shoppers are.
But you also think about with B2B. B2B is a very it's much more traditional, I feel like, than B2C in general, right? Which is part of why.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
So can you tell us your worst clients? Tell us name two clients that you can't stand.
I just want to have a follow-up.
That's good job.
I have a follow-up question to that. Is like, what do you think that is? It just that they're willing to test things out? They're willing to fail. They're not scared to fail and try things out. What do you think makes them so different than your average company that just isn't doing that?
I think that it's a super, super interesting question. I think that Marks and Spencer's actually went through a big transition maybe 10 years ago or so, where they realized that if they continue in this mode, they will eventually disappear. And if you look at you mentioned again about the retail apocalypse, right? In the UK, they call it the high street apocalypse, right? But
I didn't know they had a different term for it.
Oh yeah, retail there is called the high street, right? And massive, like really, really big companies that you probably may have heard of, like Topshop, and these are really, really well-known retail companies globally. and they no longer exist. Like companies that just went completely under, they're used, they sold the brands, they're being sold elsewhere in some cases, and some that have just completely disappeared. And Marks and Spencer's, saw that coming, right? They were aware. They have they had these quite old and stead stores, and they needed to change. And so they went whole hog on innovation across the board, both digitally and brick and mortar. And so, the technology that is deployed in the brick and mortar is very advanced, very interesting stuff. I mean, they also went very, 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 very deep when it came to, sourcing and the ecological impact of what they're doing. They took it, across the whole company. From the finance and procurement, they really went across the whole company and really revamped the culture to be a very innovative mindset. And I think that is something that, to your point about the B2B market, right? It's got to be a shift that's not happening on an individual basis, just in the digital team. It's got to be a company-wide shift.
Company-wide, cultural, innovational.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of times what we find is they're on like an old ERP, and it's like, well, where's your pricing? Oh, it's stuck in this old ERP, but how's that going to go into e-commerce, right? So I think people don't realize it's the whole thing. E-commerce is just it's part of just business.
And you've got to have people buy into it and realize the way that if you don't do this, it's a survival thing, right? Yeah. And so back to your point about the salespeople and the different parts of the organization, they've all got to buy into it, right? And I think that's
almost seems like you need like an all hands on meeting to be like, guys, we're gonna need to survive.
Yeah,
everyone, this is what's happening.
This is what we're doing. And I think that, they sometimes companies have like a chief innovation officer and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of, debate about whether this is the right approach, but, there definitely needs to be, somebody who leads that.
Well, what I usually say, I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that I do is transformation projects, and I love using that word. What happens is I'll get called in. Sometimes it's merely to stand at the end of a table and say, this is what you need to do. And then I leave, right? It's fascinating because it's like a spark. Right. Somebody need the spark in order to
validation.
They need the validation. They need all of it.
Say it like it is, you need somebody to give them a kick in the pants.
Yeah. I mean, I make a joke and I say I throw water in their face. That's the joke that I make. It's like, I am here to throw water in your face.
Right. Yeah.
So, we're coming to the end of our podcast. Do you have any things you want to tell us about the future, like where you're going to be in 2050, or no? I mean, just like what you're
2050
on a beach drinking margarita, hopefully.
Exactly. But anything you want to wrap up with here for us, it would be great to hear.
I just want to say thank you, first of all, to both of you. This was a very interesting and entertaining session, and it's nice to see two people sitting in the same office.
I can't believe it.
I also want to throw again a shout out to congratulate Isaiah on his wedding. I'm not offended that I wasn't invited. And yeah, really thank you for having us on, and it's exciting to kind of be out there and explaining kind of our value proposition, but kind of what this problem is, right? And like back to what I was saying earlier, it's really exciting to kind of show people something that's out there and that maybe they weren't familiar with, and if it lands and they're interested, great. I'm more than happy to.
And how should people find you? Are you a big LinkedIn, Twitter guy? Are you on any of the social platforms a lot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're on all the channels. I myself, I'm definitely on LinkedIn, and we're all also at all the big e-commerce conferences and all that good stuff. But we've got a great website, www.namogoo.com.
Cool.
Excellent. So we'll see you, I guess, at our conference, at Digital Commerce Today in
September. You have no excuse because you're here. You're like,
we're going to have you there. Well, thank you once again. It's great to have you, Tal Rotman from Namogoo. I'm going to say it. Thank you so much for episode 71.
Lucky 71.